Hello.
Hello.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is I'm resident of Colwood, Jewel Sains, and this is at I under slash Barnabas Mark. We are here to discuss Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Um, so this movie, man, it takes place 10 years later. Now it's not filmed 10 years later, but
Right.
they set the story 10 years after the first one. What are your thoughts of this time jump?
I think it fit the story pretty well. I think it was good. I loved seeing, like we talked about last time, seeing Anakin as a boy and innocent and getting to know him and everything. And now I think it was time to see him, as a kid old, as they say. Probably about 18, 19 years old, and kind of into his own as a Jedi. So I really liked the time leap that they did. I thought it was pretty good with the story. What about you?
I thought it was interesting. I sort of wish the prequels were set prior to Halloween H12 because George Lucas knows how to do a time jump.
Yeah. Yes, he does. He does.
I like it. I like the fact that we get 10 years later, Anakin's a teen, sort of. He's not quite an adult. And something we talked about with Phantom Menace. You can literally see Christian Haydenson, his Anakin, his teenage Anakin. It makes you think of a kid. It's not. They don't stretch this at all.
No, they don't. They don't. And he looks like, I remember when the movie came out, I had a poster that showed. I think it might have came with a book or something, and it showed a progression. It showed Jake Lloyd as a kid in the Phantom Menace growing up to Hayden Christensen looked in Attack of the Clones, and it was like perfect. It was seamless. So they did a good job on casting Hayden Christensen as the older version of Anakin, I think.
They really did. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
George Lucas has touched upon this so much too. He goes, "Of course, he'd be a teenager. Teenagers don't know what they want."
Very, and Anakin, where he grew up, um, with just him and his mom, he didn't have a lot of interaction. He had a few acquaintances on Tatooine, but you could tell like he was very socially awkward in this movie. And at the time when I first saw this movie, my initial reaction was, Hayden Christensen's not a bad actor, but some of the line deliveries felt a little cringy to me. But then, as I got older and I started thinking about it, it made perfect sense because Anakin's not had a lot of interaction with people. There's just been mostly him and his mom, and then him and Obi-Wan as master and teacher. And I thought he was great in this movie.
He would you say he lived one of the, because we don't really know how a lot of the other Jedi lived, prior to them becoming Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
He may probably have been the most sheltered of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think he felt a lot more pressure because they kind of led him on early that he was the chosen one and that he was important. And I think he felt a lot of pressure in that way growing up, and that's a lot to carry on your shoulders when you're growing up and trying to figure out what you want to be and who you are.
what were your thoughts on them killing the Queen right away?
Oh wow, that was a good fake. Um, and I would like to say that I when we talk about this movie, I'm going to try to keep my thoughts just on my first reaction to Attack of the Clones, that Revenge of the Sith had happened because and I'm not going to go too far ahead, but Revenge of the Sith did change some views on this movie, but I'm trying to keep this between 2002 and 2005. But I thought that was that was a pretty good fake out when I saw it in the theater the first time, seeing the Queen getting off the ship, and they were like, yeah, I guess we were wrong. There was no danger here. And then boom, everybody's gone bye-bye, and that ship was toast. So that was, to me, that set a good tone that this was going to be much darker than Phantom Menace.
Right, and it has the same premise as Phantom Menace too. There's an enemy you can't see, and that's Count Dooku. So
Right.
they're keeping the very same premise they had in the first one, which I love. What were your thoughts on Boba Fett being introduced in this film, the bounty hunter?
I thought it was kind of cool. It makes sense. I guess some people really take this to heart, that they extremely love it or extremely hate it, that he was a clone of Django, and I'm fine either way, but I thought it was kind of cool. I wasn't one of the hardcore Boba Fett fans, from the original trilogy, but I thought seeing him introduced as a kid was kind of neat, and you could tell he was trouble. So he had a bit of a temper to him, and a little bit of a bad attitude. But I really loved Django in this movie. Django was awesome.
I agree. I think, to me, Django almost steals this movie a little bit, because his introduction is so good. It's so crisp. It's not forced. We talked about this with Phantom Menace. Nothing is forced. I don't think anything is forced in this movie really either. I love the introduction of Django. I love how he's using another bounty hunter to do his dirty work. So, what were your thoughts on that? He's using someone else.
I guess I was thinking, I've not read any of the Star Wars novels. I've heard that the bounty hunter that he was using, Sam, that he was training her, kind of taking her on as an apprentice. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, looking at it from that perspective, that he was training her. But and my first initial thought was, why is he a big bounty hunter using someone else to assassinate someone? I didn't get it at first, but looking back, and I guess seeing it from that angle, that I guess he was training her, it made a lot more sense. But the whole chase scene through Coruscant was really, really nice. And one thing I really loved about this movie, and it was groundbreaking, especially at the time, was how everything was done digitally. They never filmed on location like they did with Phantom Menace. This was all filmed like on green screen and blue screen. So that was, I thought that was pretty impressive. What did you think about that? The look of this movie?
It looks good, and it still looks good today too. It's crazy to think that a movie from 2002 has aged that well. It doesn't. It looks good. It looks crisp. It looks better than the CGI. Some of the CGI we get today. Really, honestly, I think to say George Lucas was ahead of his time on everything is not a stretch of the imagination. Smart filmmaker, and that's how I view him when I watch him. He's very smart with Star Wars. He always has been, and with the prequels, when I first watched Attack of the Clones in theaters, I was like, me and my brother went, and I said, "You're gonna watch one hell of a movie. You watch." He goes, "You're a goddamn nerd." He goes, "I'll watch it, whatever." And he walked out. He goes, "You know what? That was pretty good." I'm like, "You see."
One thing I really liked about this, now I knew walking out of the theaters when I saw it that I still liked Phantom Menace better than this one.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not taking away from this movie at all.
No.
Really loved in this was a lot of the mystery that it introduced. That there was, um, I mean, we had always heard, from the original trilogy that the Jedi were selfless. They were always the good guys. They did no wrong. And in this one, it kind of turns that up on its head. That there is a Jedi that went rogue and deleted. A planet from the library files, and it just so happened on this planet that he ordered the people of Kamino to build a giant clone army for the Republic, and the Jedi had no clue about any of this. So, I mean, you got this thing that, Obi-Wan stumbles upon, that there's a clone army that's being, built. There's thousands and thousands of them, and they're being trained for battle. And you find out that the one Jedi that was supposed to have been dead for like over 10 years, had ordered their creation of it. And so that really turned up on its head, and I thought was really, really interesting. And I was like, where are they going with all this? What's going to happen?
Yeah, because the person they had blamed initially was Qui-Gon. I'm thinking, wait a second. I'm just like, hey, wait, Qui-Gon's dead. He didn't do it, And then you're sort of, there was a bit of noir with this in the sense of you didn't know what was going on. Like you said, you have this mystery. You're sort of with Phantom Menace. With these three prequels, sort of in a way, you're sort of playing detective. If you had never watched 4, 5, and 6, which was considered the original trilogy, it was the original trilogy when we were growing up because we're old, but you're playing if you had never watched those, in many ways you're basically playing Philip Marlowe in this. You're solving the puzzle, trying to anyway. So,
right. I really like the Detective Obi-Wan side story of this movie, and the look of the planet Kamino, where the White Halls and the cloners and everything, and Obi-Wan tracking down the dart that the other bounty hunter had used to try to kill Padme.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really found interesting, and I'm sorry if we're jumping all over the place. One thing I thought that was interesting about the whole bounty hunter thing and them trying to assassinate Padme was you get the dynamic between Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of early. Obi-Wan is a little snarky in this movie, and he's a little rough on Anakin. And their relationship is good, but it's a little bit rocky. You can tell there's some tension between the two of them.
He described it as a father-son relationship. To me, it's more like crazed uncle and nephew who doesn't want to listen. So that's how I view it.
Mm-hmm. It was good, and I think that Anakin, where we were talking about how he had been hearing that he was the chosen one, that he was powerful, and he even said it, in some ways, in a lot of ways, I'm really ahead of Obi-Wan. And I think that Obi-Wan felt responsible for trying to, harness him, his powers, his abilities, and keep them under control. And, felt like he was better than him. And you can tell that really comes to a head several times throughout this movie. And I thought that was a really, really good point of contention between the two of them, and spoke a lot for their relationship, especially like in the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, when Obi-Wan was telling Luke about Anakin Skywalker, and he said that, he was already a great pilot when I first met him, which, we saw that in the pod race in Phantom Menace, and he said that he was a good friend. And, you can tell they don't really start out good friends in Attack of the Clones. So it was an interesting thing to start out that way and see how their relationship was going to go.
In many ways, friendships, like fictional friendships, are a little like real life friendships. They're molded. They're not just created. It's built over
Right.
time and trust and everything else. So I think that's what Attack of the Clones really should have been two movies, not just one. I love George. That's my only one of my gripes about this movie. It shouldn't have just been one. It should have been two because you're trying to build a relation. They sort of talk about how they've saved each other countless times. Now we don't see that, but you believe it because they're just
Mhm.
believable actors and they're really good at selling. But they're
Right.
also in the process of forging, trying to mold this friendship still, even though they've worked together through this past 10 years. That's why
Right.
we're getting the time jump. But in many ways, I sort of wish we would have got two parts to Attack of the Clones because you could have still did more with their relationship and how it went from father son to when we see them in Revenge of the Sith, they do feel like good friends. They sort of
Oh
do,
yeah.
they do. So it
Mhm.
feels just like there's a second half to Attack of the Clones we just don't see.
Right. And from what I heard, I think this movie was originally well over 3 hours long, and George had to really work on editing it down. I mean, and it was still of the original six movies. Um, it was the longest of the six movies, and I think he got it down just under 2.5 hours. And so there's a whole lot of things that were cut out, a lot of dialogue scenes, Anakin and Obi-Wan, and also Jimmy Smith's character, Bail Organa, who we know ends up being Leia's adopted father. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen a lot more of this movie, a lot of the stuff cut.
What they really do in this movie, they work a lot on Padme and Anakin's relationship. That's what we're sort of getting with this, is because we know Luke and Leia are going to come. They're coming,
Right.
as babies. But in order for that to happen, well, you have to have a sexual relationship and a relationship in general. So
Right.
they that they're sort of building to that with this movie. So you're not. I think that's one of the reasons, other than the fact that again we don't have a whole other second an Attack of the Clones 2, so to speak. That
Right.
they're focusing on Anakin and Padme's relationship, which made sense in this film. All hands down. I love the scenery between them. They have great chemistry. Their silence, and even when they're talking, they're great. What did you think of their chemistry?
I thought they had really good chemistry. I again, like I said, Anakin came on. Uh, he came on a bit strong at first.
Yeah,
The line that he said to her was, I mean, you haven't seen a girl in 10 years, and the first thing you say to her is, "You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams." You're like, um, okay. It's like, what do you say to that? But you know, that's not exactly the best pickup line to someone you haven't seen in 10 years. But, it just shows where, um, to me, it works though, because they get a little more comfortable around each other, and the more time they spend on her home planet of Naboo, when, he's there on his mission to protect her, they become more comfortable with each other, and, their dialogue is awkward. And, I mean, I understand some people say that George has a hard time writing dialogue, but to me it fits because, Padme has grown up. She was thrust into the adult life very, very early. She was 14 when she was queen of Naboo, and then she went on to become, a senator. So, she was thrust into adult life very quickly, and didn't really have relationships. And same thing with Anakin, like we touched on before.
Mm-hmm.
They really had someone in common, and they never really had anyone like in a close relationship. And I think that was a great tie that bound them together, and they understood each other. And I love the chemistry that they had, that they were able to get each other without having to say a whole lot. They both went through similar experiences, and they both had gaps that only they can fill. And their relationship just kind of took off, and it felt natural to me, and I felt like they fit together really well.
Yeah, they definitely did. I agree with you. They don't force this to me with this. It's just this movie it's good, but again, it just when you watch this movie and then you're watching Revenge of the Sith, and when they started, when you see the outer space battle, the Count Dooku, they finish him off, and then they're coming back, and you see him and Obi-Wan. I mean, they're as thick as thieves almost in Revenge of the Sith in many ways. But and then you're thinking, okay, I really didn't see that in Attack of the Clones, at least enough of it. So to me, that's the one thing that's really missing with Attack of the Clones almost. But again, they're molding the relationship, and I get that, but what I'd like to say is there's not enough mold connection from Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith almost.
I agree, and that's one reason why I don't know if have you watched the Clone Wars animated series at all?
Yes, I have, and that is actually good.
I've never seen it. I've I've got plans, someday to watch it. I haven't seen it. I've heard it's great, but I guess those gaps aren't filled in for me because I haven't watched the show. But I guess that's my biggest gripe about this movie is that I guess I feel like I shouldn't have to watch a whole other TV series to get what the movie should have conveyed as far as the gaps in between the relationships. You can tell a lot has happened in the 3 years between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and I guess that's my biggest negative with this movie. But I still really like this movie.
I did. Yep, I did too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was done.
Okay, I did too. Attack of the animated series is actually on Disney Plus now. It's because
Right.
you could go under the category of Star Wars and just watch whatever you want that's Star Wars connected, which is nice. But I watched it when it was on Cartoon Network, and they do a lot of. They don't just do Obi-Wan and Anakin. They do Anakin has an apprentice as well. So
Ahsoka, right?
yeah, yep, they do a lot of that too. So there is a lot of connected dots with that, though it does take a lot. What I'll say, my biggest negative of it does way too much foreshadowing of the Darth Vader turn. Look, because by the time, and what I mean by that is, by the time this series came out, the prequels were already well out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
They were already well out and established. So you don't really need to do that much foreshadowing when everybody and their mother's brother knows what's coming.
Right.
That's my only negative really to that series. That's it.
Right.
So,
And what did you think about? I know last week we touched on Dooku. What did you think about him as a follow-up to Darth Maul?
Darth Maul. Here's where we agree a lot here. Darth Maul is my favorite villain outside of Darth Sidious because he's a true apprentice. He believed in the Sith. He was a true believer. He
Oh
wasn't.
yeah.
He, we've touched upon this with our previous video, but we'll reiterate it here, and that's Anakin Skywalker, who turns into Darth Vader, who is, he's always been conflicted. Darth Maul isn't. There's no confliction. He's
Right.
he's more committed than any married man you'll ever meet.
Yeah, but he's married to his work is an understatement.
Yeah, exactly. He's married to his work, uh, and it's insane how committed he is too. It really is. Like you'd have to be. I'm not saying he's insane, the character, but the fact that he's that committed to something that evil, it is the definition of insanity. It's like, dude, don't you have a hobby? No.
No, none whatsoever. I mean, I understand Dooku's purpose, and I thought it was kind of cool how you were seeing how Palpatine, because like you said in Shadow, um, there was an unseen enemy, and it was crazy thinking how he has, he's in charge of the Republic. He manipulated Jar Jar to vote to give him emergency powers and control the whole Senate, the whole Republic, and authorized the use of this clone army to fight for the Republic. And at the same time, he's used Dooku to amass an army on the other side. They call them the Separatists, and how Palpatine is like waging this war on his own, this giant civil war to make everything crumble, so that he can, take control and ultimately turn it into the Empire. So I mean, I thought that was really cool how he was, manipulating Dooku into his plans, and Dooku had no clue how much he was being used, and what a puppet he was being.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you feel Count Dooku was really a member of the dark side from a full force standpoint?
Um, I kind of, I kind of do. I wonder. I think that his motivation is a little unclear. I know that there was one thing I did notice when um, they were saying, when Padme said that, at the beginning of the movie, when they killed the Queen and um, someone tried to assassinate her, and she was quick to point the finger. She said, "I think it was Count Dooku." And then, Samuel L. Jackson, who was awesome in this movie,
Yes.
Mace Windu, says, "You understand that Count Dooku was once a Jedi. It's not in his character." And, Yoda, when he fights Dooku at the end, said that, that was his former Padawan. So Yoda was his master. So I think Yoda being his master, he had to be powerful. But I think there was probably something that Palpatine offered him, maybe power that he couldn't get with the Jedi Order, maybe. And I'm just, speculating.
Mm-hmm.
There was something that Palpatine could offer him that the Jedi couldn't, and that made him, leave the Jedi Order. But I don't think that I would say that Dooku was selfish, but I'm not going to say he was full blown evil.
I think Count Dooku didn't realize how expendable he really was until the third film.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Agree.
he fell hard for Palpatine. He believed what Palpatine was selling him. sort of like a snake oil salesman. Like, hey, I believe you. I'll take your stuff. It doesn't matter if it's a ripoff or anything. I'll take it. So that's how I feel. It's not Dooku is dumb. He's not. But he's being deceived just like a lot of other people are. I don't
Right.
feel sorry that he's being deceived because he falls hook, line, and sinker. And he even says there's a he. I think part of him knows, but not fully, because he says to Obi-Wan, and why he's tied up. Hey, there's a Sith. What if I told you there's a Sith Lord controlling the Senate? And that's sort of
Yeah.
where they plant the seed for Revenge of the Sith, is right there in that line, which I thought was great. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, son of a bitch, Count Dooku. Look, Christopher Lee could always act. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about his acting ability. But my biggest concern when I watch this movie and I go back with it, I added it up. He's 80 years old in this movie. And don't get me wrong, I love him to death. I've seen a lot of Christopher Lee horror, the Hammer movies, and I know you probably have too.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I love him, but I do wish they wouldn't have casted him in this role for this, because the fight scenes are just, I give more credit to Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor. They deserve a lot of credit for making him look great during those sequences, more so than he deserves credit for being great. And I'm not trying to be nitpicky about that at all, but when I watch it, I just go, my wife even looked, she goes, why are they like, it feels like they're slowing up for him. I said, they are slowing up for him.
Yeah, they are. And the final battle scene between Anakin and Dooku, that was I loved when Anakin had, both sabers, his own and Obi-Wan's, when Obi-Wan was down because he'd been hit in the leg. But I thought, oh, this is going to be great, seeing Anakin fighting him with two sabers, and then it slowed down to this weird close-up thing where it looked like they were just swinging the lightsabers up above their heads, and I guess because Christopher Lee couldn't do much, so they did this weird zoom in thing, and it just didn't work for me. For some people, it might have been cool. That part really didn't work.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry, I had to grab something real quick.
No problem.
Yeah, I agree with you, because again, he's a great actor, and they need a politician, and who better than Christopher Lee to be an evil politician? He's beautiful there, absolutely. It's just, when you look at Phantom Menace and how beautiful those sequences were, and even in Revenge of the Sith, which we're going to discuss, to me, the fight sequence in this, it's not that it's awful, it's cringing to watch a little bit. That's my only. I give this movie an 8.5 out of 10, because everything else, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not awful. It's not bad. It's just, you look at it and you go, I would just love to ask George Lucas, so why'd you choose Christopher Lee?
Right. And because what they chose to do with Count Dooku, they made it a very physical character, and that was something that Christopher Lee wanted to do, which I hope that I'm still, as active as he is, or was, at 80 years old, when I turned 80 years old. But, that they turned the role of Dooku into a physical role, and it, I like this movie a lot, but like you said, it missed the mark in a few places. I understand what they were doing, but yeah, for me, in a few places, it did kind of miss the mark. But speaking of the fight, what was your first reaction? Because this is a big thing. What was your first reaction to seeing Yoda with a lightsaber?
I wasn't expecting it until the third movie, honestly. So to me, when I saw it, I was like, started shaking my brother's arm. I'm like, it's fucking Yoda! It's Yoda! Got it! He like had to smack my arm off my hand off of his arm, and after that, he would not watch another Star Wars movie with me. He's like, you can't. He's like, you can't do that. He goes, oh, you were scaring me. I was like, dude, Yoda with a lightsaber. Yoda, Yoda. We never seen Yoda with a lightsaber before. This is and I agree with you, Sam Jackson. He's another person who stole this movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I remember, I never saw any commercials really for Attack of the Clones because I wanted to be surprised. So a lot of the commercials and things, I wouldn't watch them. It was really hard because I wanted to see what was going on. But that moment when Dooku and Yoda were having like kind of a force-off challenge, um, and they were throwing things with each other, and Dooku shot the lightning, and he said, it's obvious that our war can't be settled by our knowledge of the Force, but by our skills with the lightsaber. And I was like, wait a minute, what? What? And then Yoda just opens his cloak and the lightsaber floats in, and he just leaps and he's just all over the place. I was like, I couldn't believe it. That was incredible. I'd never seen Jedi move that fast and just be completely all over the place like he was. So that was like a crazy cheering, clapping moment for me. I was in awe, and even when I saw the movie the second time, I was still clapping, cheering for that moment. I thought it was incredible. I loved seeing Yoda with a lightsaber. That was awesome.
I think Yoda really, they really sell Yoda really well throughout the prequels. In the first one, they sell the council. We've talked about that, but they really sell the council. They sell the Jedi Council. They're selling the politics of these movies. It all makes sense. I mean, Star Wars, in many ways, it's not just fought, in the air with the lightsaber. It's fought in the Senate, and the Sith really knew that at heart. Like, I just can't fight them on this front. I have to fight them on this front. And that's something the Jedi really, they had underestimated. And I think that's really what I take away from the trilogy, like 1, 2, 3, is the Jedi underestimated the Sith and what they
Yeah.
were able to do, like as a whole, like one Sith was able to do.
And I think they knew that they were beat in this movie because Yoda and Mace Windu, that's for the next movie. When Yoda and Mace Windu were having a conversation, and he said, our ability to see through the Force has diminished. We need to tell the Senate. And Yoda was saying, if our enemies are in the Senate and we, show them our weakness, then we're going to have a lot more enemies. And I think at this point they knew that it was, whoever the Sith was, and they didn't know who it was, had them in checkmate. That there was nothing else they could really do. And I thought that was, kind of an important moment, a turning point in this trilogy that Yoda kind of had to admit defeat already. something bad was coming, and that it was already stronger than they were.
Do you think they knew the severity of what was coming?
I don't think so. I don't think they knew how powerful that Palpatine was, or who their enemy, that they had no idea who it was going to be.
Right, I agree. I think Padme, the biggest, Padme did not want to give up on the Senate, and I applaud her for that. But in many ways, the Senate strings are being pulled like a bunch of puppets, and we've talked about this. They're just dancing along to Palpatine's tune. You know?
Exactly.
So it's really beautiful how he's orchestra. It's like a symphony orchestra. He's the maestro. He's the conductor. He's just waving his hand and going this, and it's happening. It's like when I watched. I know I'm jumping. See, I'll plead guilty. My ass jumps more than any host you'll ever meet. But when I watched the last Star Wars, the most recent one, and Palpatine came back, I'm like, I'm not shocked. And my wife's like, what? I said, there's no better puppet master than Palpatine. I'm like, is that really shocking? I mean, I'm like, it sort of has felt like we've been getting our strings pulled. Wait, who's the ultimate string puller again? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like Metallica should have had Palpatine on their album cover, Master of Puppets. It was him.
Yeah,
So,
it really was. It was. I agree. It was him. That's a good one. I like that. What did you?
What did you? Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What did you think? What did you think of Ewan McGregor as a whole, as Obi-Wan, for the prequels?
He's my favorite Star Wars character in the whole saga. I love the way that Ewan McGregor played Obi-Wan. I thought he was very, very good as someone who, he grew up believing in the Jedi. He believed in Anakin. He believed in, everything that they taught him. And, he fought hard to uphold those principles. And he, was just a very, very straight, believer in the Jedi principles and the Jedi way. And that I believe that he always tried to do what was right. I thought Ewan McGregor was a perfect cast for him. And his voice, Ewan McGregor is Scottish, and he changed his accent, and I didn't know that until years later, that he changed his accent and matched Sir Alec Guinness, the original Obi-Wan. And I thought his accent was flawless, and I love the way that his character was written. Obi-Wan is my favorite Star Wars character, and I'm always going to go down with that ship. Obi-Wan is always going to be my favorite. I thought he was perfect. There's like Christopher Reeve as Superman, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. It's perfect.
I think they did a really great job casting Obi-Wan, because that's a lot of pressure to cast that character knowing what we all knew. When you have a I sort of said this with Freddy Krueger, when Jackie Earle Haley got cast as Freddy. And I didn't think Jackie Earle did a bad job.
No.
But again, Robert Englund is the establishment. It's sort of the same thing with Alec Guinness. He's the establishment, but what Ewan McGregor was able to do was establish that bridge between young and old. And it was beautiful. And I feel like if I could take the Nightmare on Elm Street producers of the remake and show, you see this? You see what they're doing, establishing that bridge? That's what the hell you should have did.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Jackie Earle Haley was a good Freddy Krueger, and I stand by that 100%.
He was.
And I think the writers of the movie didn't really do him any favors, and I just felt bad for him that he got handed a lousy script, because I think he really could have carried the torch well.
My wife always asks me, she goes, "Why do you blame the writers for everything that's bad with an actor?" I said, "Because they're writing the part." I said,
Right.
they've wrote this character. I said, "Listen, before you ever see a character on a movie screen, they're written on a piece of paper or on a computer." And that's sort of the key. Like, with no matter what character, whether it's, Obi-Wan, Freddy, Michael, Dr. Loomis, they're written first. And then there's the
Right.
portrayal of the written form. And when you see when you see it written really well and then portrayed really well, it syncs really, it like together like a fine-tuned machine almost.
Yeah.
But then when you see the writer sort of, take a dive and just say, "You know what, we're just going to do this and throw, just screw it."
Right.
And then you see that, and then you see, well, here's the actor who wasn't given much dialogue or not given good dialogue, and yet here's the actor selling his ass off.
Right. Best they can with what they have, trying to save it,
Right.
regardless of like it or not. They're doing their best to do a good job with it.
Exactly. And I feel that's, again, we didn't thank God we didn't have that in Star Wars.
True. True.
George Lucas knew what the hell he was doing. So,
Mhm.
and I think Ewan McGregor, I agree with you, he was the perfect cast choice for this, sort of to bridge the gap between young and old. Now, there's been rumors of talks of Obi-Wan sort of funding the rebellion. Do you think they'll get Ewan McGregor to come back and sort of portray that part, or?
I think so. I think he said that he was up for it. So I'm hoping so. And enough time has passed where I can see it would be like a natural age progression for him after Revenge of the Sith, and because that's been and it's crazy thinking that it's been 15 years since that movie came out. Um, but that was the last time he played Obi-Wan, so he was in his mid to late 30s. I think he was in his mid 30s when he was in Revenge of the Sith. So he's probably right around 50 to 53 right now, I think. So, yeah, I think that would be a good age for him to come back and be Obi-Wan, on Tatooine where he's been in hiding, and I think that would be good. And from what I've read, I think he was totally down with it. If they wanted him to come back, he would.
Again, I have the same request I have if they do Darth Maul. Get George Lucas to write it and direct it. That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Because if you're going to have somebody, to me, that's who should be, like, if they're honestly going to do more prequels, you know what I mean, to sort of tie some loose ends in, I don't mind. But we're talking about how great these are and how really we loved them. The person who I think who really made that happen so much, who took that gamble, was George Lucas, and he didn't have to. He did not have to do one damn thing, and
Right.
he
Right.
did, and it was beautiful.
If you could pick one scene out of this movie that was your favorite, what would you say is your favorite scene in this movie?
My wife's gonna listen to this, and I'm sure I'm gonna hear it. My favorite scene is when Natalie Portman is in that smoking hot dress. And let me tell you something. If I was Anakin, I would have ditched my lightsaber. I would have taken her, and I wouldn't have did a damn thing for anybody but get her the hell out of there. That's it. That's what I would have done.
Oh, I know what you mean. I definitely know what you mean.
You know,
Yeah, she was something in this movie.
she
I
was.
loved it.
She,
Yeah, she's a beautiful beautiful girl.
She really sold. I mean, you really want to talk about somebody who they cast it really well in this movie. Natalie Portman as Padme. I really think she, not just her look, she was really articulate, with her emotions and how times she would have to bottle those emotions. And once Revenge of the Sith happens, well, I'll save that for Revenge of the Sith, but
Right.
it, it's really one and two. She's sort of bottling a lot of emotion because the Queen dies in two. We talked about that, but she because a lot of weight has just now been hoisted on her shoulders because of the Queen's death, and
Right.
you can see it on Portman's face, not just her words, and that's what sells to me. I love her portrayal of this character.
Yeah. Same here.
What was your
I
favorite scene?
My favorite scene is when Anakin finds his mother in the Tusken Raider camp when they go back to Tatooine. That he has all these nightmares and he sees that she's in pain, and he remembered his promise that he would come back and free her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a relatable scene. You understand why he just went nuts, and when he was holding his mom, and she said those last words. She said, now I'm complete. And he was thinking he was going to get her out and save her and take her home, and she just died. You could see that shock, and I can imagine the flood of emotions that he was feeling. He was probably feeling guilt that he wasn't able to keep his promise, and then the music starts swelling, and then you could just see it all over his face. Everything turns to like full blown anger, and you just get this oh crap feeling, because you know what he's capable of. And I thought it was great, and I wish the scene could have been a little bit longer. Maybe because I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a body count, because I'm twisted that way sometimes. But I thought that they, I thought they cut the scene off a little too short when you see Anakin, bust out of the tent, and he, starts mowing down the Tusken Raiders left and right. And when he breaks down and he tells Padme, that he not only killed, um, the adults, that he killed the women and the children too, that he wiped out and slaughtered the whole camp because he just, he was so angry he couldn't control it. And I thought that was probably one of the most emotional scenes in the whole prequel trilogy, and you can really understand Anakin. And I don't think if that would have been me, I wouldn't have been able to contain myself. I would have reacted the same way if I would have had those abilities that he did, and knowing what they had done, and they had killed my mom. I wouldn't have been able to restrain myself and keep to the Jedi code. So I thought that was a really, really important scene, and in Anakin's journey to the dark side.
Right. I agree with 1000%. It's very telling because what they're trying to do also in this movie is paint the picture that there is darkness in Anakin, and
Oh, yeah.
he's susceptible to the dark side, and that's something they're trying to really get across in this film. And we've talked about a second part, and that's a part of the reason too. I've said about the second part, but what I'll say though too is even though there's not a second part to where they could have did a little more with that, I feel for what they do, they get it across. They do get. You hear the jealousy. You hear the tone he takes. It's very not complete Sith, but pre-Sith.
Yeah.
It's that's underneath the surface. It's underneath the skin. It's not ready to come out, but it's going to come out. And I think that's
Yeah.
something when you see the action he takes. It's like Okay, now you got me. Now you've sold me that he could turn.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's where George Lucas sold that scene with the Tusken Raiders. I agree with you. George Lucas, right there, he sold you. Anakin is susceptible to the dark side, and he did a beautiful job doing it.
Hmm. He did. He really did. And 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 I love that it made it, something that everyone could relate to. Just like I mentioned that I loved how he had Anakin as a little boy, because everyone can relate to having an innocent
Mhm.
child somewhat, and being a happy kid at some time. And Anakin's pain is something relatable that everybody can feel. And um, I really love the way that he told that part of Anakin's story, and how um, like you said, that he had that ability and he was very susceptible to the dark side, and it was for reasons that we can understand and that we can relate to. And that's what I think of most. The one scene that anytime somebody says, Episode 2 or Attack of the Clones, my mind immediately clicks to that scene, and that's that's just forever ingrained in my mind. That whenever I think of this movie, that's the first thing I think of. That was the big scene to me. And also the battle. I loved a lot of the camera work at the with the battle of the clones, when the clone troopers came with
Right.
Yoda, the Jedi, and stuff, and like a lot of these Rambo looking shots of Yoda looking out the it looked like a helicopter shot of Yoda watching all the fighting and everything. And this was a really really pretty movie. And like I said before, um, it just really pushed a lot of boundaries, shooting on digital film and showing what they could do, where technology was going. It was just incredible seeing all this on screen for the first time.
I think the one thing I agree with you, George Lucas really took advantage of the technology he had.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't misuse it like we do see today sometimes. He
Mm-hmm.
knows what he's doing with it. And
Yeah.
it, I agree with you, the where the stormtroopers are coming in. Well, they're going to be called stormtroopers, but clone army. The
Right.
it's really, and I like Jango Fat. Everything that happened at that battle at the end, it wasn't it wasn't bad. It was really good. Again, my
Mm-hmm.
only complaint really is the sequence with Dooku with the fighting, but
Mm-hmm.
the overall battles with the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Jackson's character was amazing. They just
Yeah.
really pulled that sequence off. Mace Windu, I
Mm-hmm.
want to, they really pull that sequence off of the Jedi taking this stand.
Mm-hmm. And it was great seeing them in action, as opposed to in the last movie we saw them sitting still and sitting on the council, and they were more like monks. And in this movie they were the whole package. You got to see them doing that, and you got to see the Jedi in their prime in action, a whole bunch of them on screen, and it was pretty exciting. I I loved seeing it.
Do you think Attack of the Clones laid the foundation of how important the Jedi really were before being wiped out?
Um, I think so. Um, I can see that. Yeah, it really showed them a lot. I think of Obi-Wan's that they were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. You really got to see that in full force in this movie. And seeing that they weren't just someone that sat still and made decisions and were diplomatic, but they would use force when it came, when it uh, was necessary. So you could see their purpose in the galaxy, or in this world, a lot better. and to me, I felt a lot more weight. And I'm trying to save all these for Revenge of the Sith, but when Order 66 happens, you can really feel the weight of the situation. Like, oh no, everything is, really falling apart, and feel the weight and the emotion of the situation.
Right, we're gonna save a lot of our Revenge of the Sith stuff for Revenge of the Sith. But
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow night, guys, we're gonna do Halloween. Me and Mark are gonna do Halloween, and I want you to think of your ranking because I want you to give your ranking tomorrow night too, if you wouldn't mind, dear sir.
No, I don't mind at all.
Is there anything you want to add before we get on out of here?
Um, I can't think of anything. I think we pretty well covered this. What do you think?
I think so too. I do think I'm excited for our not just Halloween tomorrow, but when we do our Revenge of the Sith. I love
Mm-hmm.
doing these. I have a lot of fun bringing you on, man. Thank you so much for coming on and being my guest with these.
Thank you always for inviting me.
You take care and God bless, man.
You too, man. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye. Is my camera still running? Yes, it is.